Hey guys, it's Dr.NostalgiaGamer here. Welcome back to another episode. Today I'm going to be going through the game shelf. I'll be doing a piece-by-piece look at different systems and going through what I have so you guys can see the stuff I've got going on there with different systems and the values of my collections and things like that. So anyway, let's get started. Alright, so to start off, we're going to be taking a look at my NES collection, the Nintendo Entertainment System. I'm going to be going through all of the loose games that I have for the NES. Not one by one, but I'll just be taking it by section, letting you guys see and doing a general pan of everything that I have and naming some prices and stuff on the stuff that I do have and just going through my collection as a whole. So, first of all, I have a total of 130 games on the NES. That's all the loose games that I own. And, let's see. The collection itself is worth just under $1,000. So 130 games. Between all 130, it's about $1,000. It's $950 is what I have estimated for the value, but it's like I said, it's right at about $1,000. So I'm going to go through now. First of all, I'm just going to do kind of a quick up close pan of what I have. Alright, so that's all the games anyway. Okay guys, so to start off with, I'm going to be going through the top 10 most valuable games I have in my NES collection. I'm going to be starting with number 10 and then going up. I'll be showing you the game, talking a little bit about the game briefly, and then telling you guys the price and value of it. So, let's see. Start off with, we have DuckTales on the NES by Capcom. This was a cartoon series put out by Disney in the 80s. Extremely popular cartoon. That's why I made a video game of it. It's actually a really good game too. It's often referred to as being a very difficult game, but which it is if you don't really know how to play it. But once you've learned how to play it, it's very, very easy, and you can go through it pretty quickly. Now, like I said, most people consider it to be a pretty tough game, but it's pretty cool, and it's one of the really good games on the system as well. Overall, the game has very little that is bad about it. Unlike a lot of games on the system that you can say have a lot of problems, this is one of them that doesn't really have very many. In this game, at least as of the last time I checked it on Video Game Price Chart, it was worth about $15. So that makes it number 10 in my video game collection for the NES as far as value goes. Next up is Final Fantasy. So this is the classic kind of RPG game that has been extremely popular for a very long time. This game is pretty cool. It's definitely not my favorite on the system, but it's a pretty decent game. And this game retails for about $15 as of the last time I looked at the value. Let's see. So, next up in my collection, we have Kirby's Adventure. This is, I think, maybe the first ever Kirby game. I actually grew up playing Kirby a lot when I was a teenager. I used to love to play Kirby Nightmare in Dream World, I believe was the game, on the Game Boy Advance. That was a game that I really, really enjoyed playing, and I played it probably 3 or 4 times all the way through as a kid, and still to this day, it's one of my favorite games on a Game Boy Advance. So this is one of the games, as you can tell by this gold label here, this is one of the games that has battery so that you can actually save it. But anyway, so this is a really fun game. This is a good one on the system as well. And Kirby tends to sell for about $20 as of the last time I checked the pricing. Next up, we have Castlevania 3, Dracula's Curse. So this is a really difficult game from what I've been told. Castlevania in general tend to be a little bit more difficult. This guy's made by Konami, just like every Castlevania game. This game's pretty hard, like I said, just like most Castlevania games, but it's also really good. It's got a good storyline, and if you can get past the difficulty of it, it's a really killer game on the system. And so this guy is about $20 as of the last time that I checked the price, but yeah, so that's a pretty good game. Next up, we have one of the best on the system, Mike Tyson's Punch-Out! This is a really, really good game. This is one of the most classic games, I think, on the system for the NES. It's one of those games where it's like if you know somebody that grew up in the 90s and ever touched a video game console, grew up in the 80s and ever touched a video game console, I can guarantee you they've at least heard of this game if they haven't played it. But yeah, so it's a really good game, boxy game, obviously, and yeah, I mean, it's a good game. There's not really much else you can say about it other than that. And this guy, once again, is worth about $20. Next up, we have North and South. So this is a pretty interesting game. So the way that this guy works is it's a Civil War game. It's sort of a historical game, which there weren't very many of those on the NES. Most NES games were pretty similar to each other. There weren't very many that were kind of different. This is one of the ones that was different. So with this game, you can either play as the North or the South, as the game might imply to you, and you can play either as the Union or the Confederacy during the Civil War. It's a pretty cool little game. You intersect each other, you fight little battles. It kind of reminds me, I'm trying to think of another game that's like it, but I can't remember the name of it now. I used to play it as a kid, but there was a game like that on the Game Boy as well, where you would move your characters around. As soon as they touched each other, then you would get into a battle. North and South is very similar to that. And this game's worth about $25. A little bit more uncommon than your average game. I've only ever seen, I think, one copy or so of that ever before. So, next up, we have Zelda, The Legend of Zelda 2. The Adventure of Link. So this is one of the gold cart games. It's also one of the battery games, as you can see here. This is a pretty good game. I'm not a huge fan of the second one. The first one's definitely better in my opinion. I'm not a huge fan of this guy, but it's still a pretty good game, and it's a Zelda game, and it's a Zelda classic too. It's not just a game. It's a classic Nintendo just because of the fact that it's a Zelda game. And so this guy is worth about $25 as well. Next up, we've got the original and very first ever Legend of Zelda. So this is obviously another gold cart. The Legend of Zelda games always typically were. They were one of the cool games that got to have a gold cartridge. Once again, a battery-operated game, so you could save it. One of the few on the system that you could. Pretty cool label, too. So this is the first one. This is the first ever Zelda game. Really, really good game. Some people consider this to be the best game of all time. I don't know if I would go quite that far, but it is a really good game. I will say that much. And this guy, once again, is about $25. Next up, and second most valuable game I own, is Contra by Konami. So, Contra is actually one of my favorite games on the NES. I've always thought that Contra was a really good title. It's a lot of fun. It's definitely not an easy game, but it is a lot of fun. And if you use the Contra code, it becomes much easier to get further. I've never actually beaten this game, but I've gotten a little bit over halfway through before I lost out on all my, I think it's 23 lives that you get with the Contra code. But yeah, so this is a really good game. I really like it. A lot of fun. This game's worth about $30 as of the last time that I had looked it up. And then lastly, we have Alfred Chicken on the NES. This game, I think, is one of those games where it's valuable because it's a little bit weird, and because of that, people didn't really buy it. So this game was made by, I don't know if you guys can see that, but it was made by Mindscape. This was one of the last games, I think, if I remember correctly, one of the last games ever made for the NES before they stopped making games for it. This one was actually made in 1993, which is really late. So in 1993, the SNES was in full swing, and a couple years later, the N64 was about to come out. So this was an 8-bit game that was made 2 years before they released the Nintendo 64, which had had extremely much higher graphic capability. So yeah, so this is pretty good game. It's fun and it's weird, but it's a pretty good game. Like I said, so as of the last time I looked it up, it was worth $30. But I looked it up more recently, and I saw that the average price has gone up to almost $65 for this guy. That's crazy. I can't imagine that. I think I paid like, I don't know, maybe like $2 or $3 for it is what I paid for it. So I'm excited to have it for the price that I got it for. Alright guys, well that's it for this episode of Dr. Nostalgia Gamer. I hope you guys enjoyed it, and I hope that you will tune in next time for when I get to dive a little bit deeper into my game room. And I hope you guys enjoyed it, and I will see you guys next time. Thanks and have a good one.